Hey guys, it's Han, and today I have my Tamiya Super Hornet. This is a secondhand Super Hornet I got in the very early days of my channel, and you guys can check out some of my old videos about when I first got this thing on my channel. I will put them at the end of this video, probably, so you can check those out. But I wanted to talk about what I've kind of done to my Hornet and my general story with the Super Hornet. So the Super Hornet as a model is a car that I never even knew about until it came around my radar through Ampro Engineering. Ampro Engineering is another creator on YouTube. He makes a lot of 3D printed parts and has made a lot of contribution to the RC hobby, especially Tamiya. Um, and so I have a lot of respect for him, and I enjoy talking to him and hearing his thoughts on things. So I have a lot of respect for him, and I love watching his videos. And some of the videos I loved the most on his channel were his buyer's guide videos. And his very first buyer's guide video that he released at this point, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago already. But the first buyer's guide video he released was of his original Hornet. And he kind of went over the history of the Hornet and like kind of did a full review of it, kind of. And I absolutely fell in love with the Hornet. It was also a car I never really knew about until I saw it on his channel. But the way it drove, the way it looked, and also the very low price of this thing, especially at the time, um, all was very appealing. And at that time, I was kind of on my way out of the hobby. I kind of uh, I hadn't really actively participated in the hobby in a very long in a long time, and I was kind of getting ready to like fully step out. But after watching his videos and seeing the Hornet and in getting it for myself, after building it and driving it, I was absolutely hooked. So I was hooked on the hobby. I was hooked on Tamiyas again, especially the older vintage Tamiyas. I wanted to experience them, and it just brought me a lot of joy at a time when I was struggling a lot with a lot of dark thoughts and just not in the very best place in my life. Um, but these cars really gave me a lot of joy, and just watching it drive around and hop around, just the entire experience was just like completely fun. If fun if you look up fun in the dictionary, you'll probably see a Tamiya Hornet in there. It's just a very fun, um, carefree kind of buggy to drive. So I absolutely fell in love with it. I have made some Ampro engineering upgrades to it as per his recommendations, and they're very good parts, honestly. And I had a lot of fun with this buggy, but uh, soon after he released the buyer's guide for this car, he released the buyer's guide for the Super Hornet. And when I saw the Super Hornet, I absolutely fell in love with the Super Hornet because I had already fallen in love with the Hornet. I loved like basically everything about it, just um, the whole experience, driving it, looking at it, building it, working on it. Just I absolutely loved it. But the Hornet is a 80s buggy. It's much older than I am even. And so even though it felt had that kind of a nostalgic feel for me, it was kind of a secondhand nostalgia where I wasn't really feeling the nostalgia for myself. It was kind of what I imagined someone that would have grown up with this buggy would have felt. It's weird, but like kind of like a secondhand nostalgia. But with the Super Hornet, I got a lot more of like a direct nostalgia from it. Not because I grew up with a Super Hornet or anything, but the overall look of it. A lot of the like the toy grade RC buggies I grew up playing with looked very similar to this type of buggy style. Um, on top of that, the Super Hornet is a 90s buggy, so it has that very like iconic 90s neon aesthetic, which I'm a big fan of, and I'm personally very nostalgic for. So that really appealed to me. And on top of that, it looks very, very similar to the character RC from Toy Story, and I love Toy Story. I grew up on Toy Story. So the fact that it kind of looked like the RC car character from that movie really, really appealed to me as well. Unfortunately, unlike the Hornet and some of the other cars like the Lunchbox and Grasshopper 2 and stuff like that, the Super Hornet was never re-released, and I'll go into a bit later why I don't think Tamiya will ever re-release the Super Hornet. But the only way I could experience the Super Hornet was to find one secondhand or find one that was preserved in box on eBay or something like that. And when I went on eBay, either I couldn't find any Super Hornets, or they were absurdly expensive. So I kind of gave up on trying to find a Super Hornet, and I ended up getting this thing instead. This is the Tamiya Rising Fighter. So the Rising Fighter is essentially a Super Hornet, except improved in a number of ways. If you see the two bodies together, they're essentially the exact same bodies. The only thing that's different is the Rising Fighter no longer has the little bosses and the holes for the lights, as well as the entire spoiler section has been completely removed, because the rear section of the Rising Fighter is actually a DTO1 buggy, whereas the forward half is a Super Hornet. So this was the closest I could get to having a Super Hornet. So I ended up getting the Rising Fighter, getting the Ampro brace, getting the Ampro shock mount, which is very similar to the stock Super Hornet shock mount, and used it as kind of like a proxy experience of a Super Hornet. And this vehicle right here, I think also is the reason that the Super Hornet will never be re-released, because I think even in Tamiya's eyes, this already fills the spot of the Super Hornet, and it essentially is a Super Hornet. And most importantly, I believe that they changed their molds for the body in order to produce this body. So I don't think they'll ever be able to produce this original body ever again without great expense. And I really don't see Tamiya doing that just to release one measly buggy. But kind of like a side note, that kind of makes it sadder, I think, that they did not put the Hornet name on this buggy and decided to name it a fighter buggy, like a Rising Fighter. But that's a story for a different time. But yeah, unfortunately, because this thing exists, I don't think the Super Hornet will ever be re-released. But you know, you can't have everything you want, and I'm personally not too upset about it, especially since I have two Super Hornets now. I have this secondhand one and a brand new in-box one that's still unassembled, that I found kind of as like a barn find. So at this point, I'm not too upset about it, but if you are a fan of the Super Hornet and you really want a Super Hornet, I can see why you'd be kind of upset that Tamiya won't ever re-release it again. But anyway, back to the Super Hornet. The body of the Super Hornet I actually like a lot better than the Rising Fighter, especially the spoiler design. It is an integrated spoiler, so once it breaks, you're gonna have to replace the entire body, which is kind of a downside. But the look of it, I think, looks a lot cooler. This side piece right here really looks like kind of hornet wings and really fits the name of the buggy, and I just absolutely love the way this thing looks. So that's the kind of my story with the Super Hornet. When I got this one in particular, it wasn't in mostly good shape, working order. The mechanical speed control is still in there. And so I got to experience what a mechanical speed control was like, and it was a lot of fun. I have videos about that on my channel. But the stickers were kind of peeling, and the bumper mount was broken, so I decided to kind of restore it to kind of more my specifications. So some of the changes I made was the MCI racing decals, obviously. I got rid of all the decals, and I did this color scheme kind of because my Hornet was already in that color scheme, as well as my Honda City Turbo and my Blackfoot, and my Cloudbuster actually. So a lot of my vehicles are in this color scheme, so I decided to kind of follow the trend and do it up like this, and I think it turned out pretty good. Initially, the wheels were supposed to be pink, but the neon pink I painted the wheels did not match the pink of the body, so I ended up just going with the white, and it ended up matching my Hornet because I intended to paint these wheels, but I never ended up doing it. So, but I think it looks a lot better just with white wheels anyway. So, um, yeah, that's how I have it. And speaking of the wheels, these are not the original wheels, obviously. These are the more modern, like Astral dish style wheels. They're actually off of a Rising Fighter. You can see this Rising Fighter has the same wheels. And I like the wider front tires on this wheel just because I drive my Hornets mostly on like hard pavement surfaces. So this gives me a lot better traction for that kind of surface. And then the rear pin spikes on that these come with, they last pretty long, and they're honestly not very good off-road anyway. So I just like this whole combination, and I like the look of the wheels. So um, I think it fits pretty nicely. The fronts are bearing wheels, so they fit on without a problem. The rears though are you need a adapter, a 12 millimeter hex adapter meant for the Frog and the Grasshopper and the Hornet in order to fit these wheels, because the Super Hornet and the Grasshopper 2 use like a proprietary rear hub. So you need that adapter in order to fit regular 12 millimeter hex wheels. So I went ahead and did that. Another reason I upgraded the wheels was because the stock Super Hornet wheels are notoriously fragile. They will get stress marks very easily, and they're not really a standard size. So the tires for them are very hard to find. And so I decided, since I was gonna run this buggy, I might as well have some more easier to find wheels and tires on it, as well as more durable. So that's the story behind that. Um, the body does come molded in black, but I ended up sanding it down and painting it black, but the paint didn't apply properly, and that's the main reason why this project took so long to finish, because I never ended up fixing the paint, or it took me a while to end up actually fixing the paint and stuff. And even now it's kind of orange peeled a little bit, but it's gonna be a runner anyway, so it's not a huge deal for me. But I did paint the body in black, and I think it turned out pretty well. I hid most of the blemishes and stuff. There's still some huge gashes that I couldn't really cover up, but on camera it looks pretty good. And when it's moving around, you're not really gonna notice. The other part that was really broken on the buggy was this light is cracked, and I had fixed it, but unfortunately I forgot about the crack. And when I was putting the lights on, I over tightened the screw and ended up breaking the light again. So this one's cracked, so I have to fix that. But again, not a huge deal. And the bumper mount was broken, so I had to replace the entire chassis. So this chassis is actually off of a Rising Fighter as well. So it's not completely on a all original vintage Super Hornet, but who the heck cares? It's gonna be a runner, and like I said, I have a new in box actual a new old stock Super Hornet anyway, so it matters even less to me. The mechanical speed control, I experienced it. It was novel, but like Ampro Engineering says, and like a lot of people with MSCs say, they're trash and very sketchy, and not very accurate at all. So I got rid of it, ripped all of that out, and I put in the Tamiya TBLE02S ESC, and that one's been working like a charm. I did leave the resistor heatsink still up here because I thought it looked pretty cool. Has a nice, cool vintage look to it. So I left that on there, but everything else from the MSC is completely gone. But other than that, it's basically, I also have ball bearings in it, but other than that, it's basically a pretty standard Super Hornet. The CVA shocks are stock. Nothing really crazy to it. I do have the Amper Engineering transmission brace on here to kind of stop that, but nothing too drastic on it. Basically just a color scheme change and wheel and tire change is basically what this whole thing was, which is why I think it's more ridiculous that it took me so long to complete. But it's done now, and I'm pretty happy with it. I really like this color scheme, but I also really like the box art. So when I eventually get around to building my new old stock Super Hornet, I'm kind of conflicted on whether I want to build that in the box art color scheme or if I want to do a shelf queen version of this. I'm not quite sure yet. I might just go with box art. Who knows? But that's that. Yeah, again, story for a different time. But yeah, that's basically what I've done to my Super Hornet. Pretty basic stuff. And unfortunately, I haven't really been able to run this a lot because after I completed it, I really didn't really get a chance to drive it that much. And also, every time I think about driving this one, I end up driving my Rising Fighter anyway because this one is a lot less risk. Also, it's more durable and it drives better anyway. So, all that said, I end up going for this one rather than that one. But once the weather gets better, I promise to get this on film, zipping around on whatever surface I end up driving it on. I did drive it, like I said, when I originally got it, but I've never driven it in this setup. So I'm actually pretty curious on how this thing will handle with the new wheels and tires. If you are thinking about getting a Super Hornet or like looking for a Super Hornet and getting one, part support for this is actually pretty good, despite the fact that they've never re-released this, because most of the parts that this uses have been re-released. Like the chassis is used on the Rising Fighter and the Grasshopper 2. Same thing with the front A-arms. The front bumper has been reused many times in a lot of Tamiya buggies, so that's going to be super easy to find. The transmission is very common as well because it's used on the Hornets and the Grasshopper 2 and the Grasshopper and the Midnight Pumpkin, Lunchbox. So all pretty standard parts. Literally the only parts you're really going to have trouble finding is obviously the body is going to be pretty rare. So protect the body at all costs. And this rear suspension mount here is a pretty rare piece to find. Fortunately, Ampro Engineering does have a 3D printed recreation, like replica of this. So unless you're like absolutely a diehard, have to have all original parts Super Hornet kind of person, that is still available. The wheels and tires are kind of hard to find, but they have been re-released on like the Nova Fox and whatever the civilian version of the Fast Attack vehicle is. I can't remember, but some re-release buggies have used the wheels and tires that came with the Super Hornet, so you may be able to find those. But essentially, the buggy, like the buggy itself, is pretty expendable. Essentially, the only thing you're really gonna have to protect is this body, because they're not making any more copies of this body. So just a quick little tip, and kind of a long-winded video I think here, but I hope you guys enjoyed this this video of my Super Hornet, and let me know what your thoughts are on the Super Hornet, and if you guys want to see more from me regarding the Super Hornet and the other Hornets and the Grasshopper type vehicles, and I'll get some videos out there. I do plan on eventually doing a comparison between the original Hornet, the Super Hornet, and the Rising Fighter. I do also have a Grasshopper 2 coming in at some point, so maybe I'll add that into the mix. But yeah, I'm gonna plan on doing that. That's a video I had in mind for a very long time, so I'll probably get around to that at some point. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.